Hello and welcome to the OTB channel. Have you tried Spectrwm yet? Well, me neither up until a couple of days ago, but I keep hearing it mentioned, so I thought it was high time I gave it a spin. See you on the other side of the intro. Okay, welcome back. So, tiling window managers. Well, those of you who are regular viewers of this channel will know that several months ago I went down a path of exploring these to see what they're all about. And I tried i3 and I tried BSPWM and I played about with Xmonad and qtile. And the bottom line was, I decided BSPWM was brilliant. It made sense to me. And I've had it as my main desktop now for, it's over 2 months. I've become very used to it and very comfortable with it. Xmonad and qtile, less so. I struggle with the Python and the Haskell languages in configuring it. For me, it seemed like a huge amount of work and I needed to do an awful lot of learning to get it to look how I wanted. But BSPWM I've really enjoyed, and I'm a convert to tiling. Once you get used to it, and you have to give yourself some time to actually acclimatise to a different way of working, I doubt I'll ever go back. Now, Spectrwm, I keep hearing the name. Initially, it started off with a couple of videos DT produced, and it looked interesting, based on Xmonad, DWM, but with a difference, with a text configuration file that's readable and understandable, essentially plain text. I believe it's written in C, but configured relatively straightforwardly. And I thought, okay, well, that looks good, something to get to, shortly. But I've been asked since, can you have a look at this? Can you have a look at this? By quite a few people. And I keep seeing Spectrwm popping up on YouTube. So I thought it was high time. I spent a few days getting to grips with it. So what I've done, I'm going to show you a before and after. I'm in the middle of switching some of my systems around on my computer. So I've actually got 2 versions of Arch at the moment. One on the NVMe drive, which I'm talking to you from now, and another on an external SSD, which is eventually going to be replaced. So I've just installed it on the old SSD, not configured it at all, and I'll show you what it looks like to start off with, and then we'll move on so you can see what I've actually done over the last couple of days to configure the system to my liking. So without further ado, let's go. Right, so you'll see in front of you the basic Spectrwm screen. I've literally just installed it on my Arch system that's on an SSD, and the only dependency was dmenu, which was a bit annoying for me because I'd removed dmenu and installed a package called Rofi dmenu so that Rofi was called whenever dmenu was called, essentially. But this package wouldn't install until I'd actually installed dmenu. So, okay, no problem. I don't know whether it has something to do with the output that you can see on the top left of the bar. The one thing to say about Spectrwm when you first open it up, though, is it's not pretty. But barring a few exceptions, the same could be said of most of the tiling window managers I've looked at. Certainly Xmonad, certainly qtile, and even to an extent i3. Perhaps the only exception was the awesome window manager that comes with wallpaper or a default wallpaper already configured. The thing to do, though, is to see this as the blank canvas. At the moment, I have nothing configured. I haven't pulled down any configuration files, so it's just using the defaults. And if you use the defaults, you open a terminal by hitting Super, the window key, Shift and Return. And it opens essentially Xterm, because that's what it's hard-coded to do. So if I did it again, there you go. It looks wrong at the moment because my X resources file is configured with the Nord color schemes, and they clash quite badly with the black bar at the top with its, I don't know what you call it, almost like a turquoise border that goes round it. But ignore the look and feel. You can do a huge amount with it. I believe this is very much inspired by DWM and Xmonad, because if I keep opening terminals, you'll see it does this master and stack layout. I quite like this. This is essentially the default as well on my BSPWM desktop, and I tend to stick to it, to be honest. I don't swap layouts a lot. Although you can actually hit Super and the spacebar, and you can move to a horizontal layout, or you can maximize a window. And let's go back. So there's essentially 3 layouts there. It comes configured with lots of key bindings. You can find the key bindings file in the etc directory, and I'll show you that in a minute. But essentially, if you hit Super P, you get D menu there. So you've got a menu pre-installed. If you want to shut a window, it's Super and X, and you can see down here that the bottom terminal has got that red border around it, which indicates it's active. And if I just do Mod X, all done, not a problem. What else can I do? Let me just open another one. If I want to move around between different terminals, I can just use the, L and H. I'm getting my key bindings mixed up. L and H, the standard Vim keys, will allow you to increase or decrease the size of your active window. Super Tab will allow me to focus on a different window. So again, if I wanted to make that bigger or smaller, I just hit the Mod and the H and L keys. If I want to maximize a window, there's a toggle here, which is Mod E. And I can set maximize on and off. If I want to move screens, what I would actually do to move the focus to another screen, and it's actually the screen where OBS is playing at the moment, I would do Mod Shift and the left key. If I wanted to move back, Mod Shift and the right key. Now, some of the key bindings, the default key bindings, do not work if you're in the UK. So you will discover these as you go along, but there is a bit of a workaround. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a default UK key binding file, but it's really not an issue because you're going to modify these to suit yourself anyway. So yeah, you can do quite a lot with it. You can move around, as I say, so it's easy enough. You can change your windows around. You can shut windows down. You can reopen windows, as many as you want. You can move around with Alt-Shift. And it feels, Alt-Tab, and it feels really comfortable. I suppose it's partly because I've got used to a tiling window manager in BSPWM. I've found, to be honest, that I don't use that many of the key bindings. I tend to use a default configuration at all points. I am very rarely going to have more than 3 windows open on one screen, so the standard layout sort of suits me. Not sure how many workspaces you can have on this, but I think it comes configured with 9. And if I wanted to move, you can see up here on the top left, I'm on workspace 1 at the moment. Workspace 2 is showing on my other monitor. So the way it works is if I try to move to workspace 2 now, it doesn't actually shift over to the other screen. It brings workspace 2 from my other screen over to this screen, and they swap places. If I go to a workspace that's not open though, so 3, 4, 5, 6, as you can see, the little number up there just changes. One of the areas of confusion that I've had is, I believe the first number here, you'll see it says 1:6. So it's workspace number 6, because if I move back, it's workspace number 1. The screen number 1 seems to read number 1 on both of my screens. There's the concept within Spectrwm that you have regions, and it's XR and R compatible, so it knows I've got 2 screens, and by default it will create 2 regions, 1 for each screen. But regions aren't necessarily confined to screens, I believe, so it gets complicated. I'm not quite sure why it's only seeing screen 1 and it's not seeing a screen 2 at any point. There might be something in the configuration file to define, that my screen 1 is DP-1 and my screen 2 is DP-2. Not sure, but it isn't affecting the functionality at all. Anyway, with that said, this is what it looks like to start off with. If you want to refresh it, it's simply a case of mod Q. If you want to come out of this altogether, it's mod shift Q. So that exits Spectrwm. So enough playing around with the defaults. Let me reboot this machine, go on to my main system, and I'll show you what I've done with it over the last day. Okay, so we're back at my desktop now, and what you see in front of you is Spectrwm after I spent about a day messing about with it. You can see that I've made the bar at the top a little bit higher by adding thicker borders. I've messed around with basically the way it was laid out by separating it into a left side region and a right side region, and I'm piping in some various bash scripts at the moment to it, showing hard disk space, current memory usage, CPU utilization, and network downspeed and upspeed, and also a script that tells me how many updates I have at the moment, including the Pacman main repositories and the AUR. And of course, I've got my clock over there on the right. So how long did it take to get all of this done? Well, if I'm honest, it took me most of yesterday. It really did. And I started off with the configuration file. Well, in fact, I started off by going to the Arch Wiki and seeing what I needed to find out. Now, the first thing that I noticed was, well, let me wind back a little bit. What the Arch Wiki suggested I do is, rather than stick with the default key bindings and the default configuration, to actually copy the default configuration, which is in the etc directory, to my home directory and call it .spectrum.conf. You'll see that there. It's a little bit strange it's not going into the config directory, and what I will probably end up doing is putting it in the config directory and then just putting a symlink to it in my home directory. It also advised that I would need to look at the key bindings that were available, again, in the etc directory. There is a separate folder in the etc directory called Spectrum or Spectrwm, and in it, it contains a range of different key bindings files. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a UK keyboard layout there, so I've taken the US one for the time being, and I'm still going to be modifying it. And I essentially pasted it directly into my configuration file. I'll show you this in a second. I also set keyboard mapping in my configuration file to dev null. What that does is it disables Spectrwm looking at the default key bindings, and it allows me to mess around with them myself. So let's just go over there and see what it looks like. So this is the default key binding, and there's a whole range of things here. It starts off with just some basic general things about the workspace and window decorations. Now, when you first copy this over to your home directory, you'll notice that most of this is actually commented out because it has default values that are applied. Well, I wasn't quite sure what to uncomment and what to keep commented, so I did the normal thing, and I went on GitHub and GitLab and looked at what other people have been doing. And DT, thanks so much, mate. You gave me a great start on this, and I had a look at what other people were using in terms of the settings. And the first thing I tried to do was to set the colour scheme. As you know, I'm a fan of Nord, and so I thought, well, I'll set the Nord colour scheme then. Here I came against my first challenge through not reading the script properly. Up here it says, note, all RGB colour values in this file are in hex. CX query colour for examples. So the way that colours are expressed is like this. RGB : blah, blah, blah. Now, without looking at what it had said at the beginning of the script, I'm thinking, well, that doesn't look like an RGB code, how they're normally expressed, because you'll get RGB and then it'll be in brackets with the 3 different sections separated by commas. But I thought it's clearly RGB. And I spent hours fiddling about converting my hex colours, my Nord hex colours, over to RGB. And then putting what I thought was the correct RGB code in here. And of course it wasn't. The colours were all over the place. It just did not work, as you can imagine. And tearing my hair out, there's none to tear out really, I suddenly realised, I caught note of this, all RGB colours in this file are in hex. And I thought, I wonder if this just is the hex value, but rather than, if we take this one at the top, rather than expressing it as hash 5E81AC, it's being expressed as RGB : 5E/81/AC. So I tried that, and what do you know, it works. And I got my colours as I want them. I've also got some gaps. Let me just open up another terminal there. You can see there's a nice gap between the terminals, so it's exactly as I want it. Then we came to the bar, and I have to say the bar probably took me longer than anything else to configure. I got the colours sorted to start off with, and I wasn't bothered about all this gubbins over here. I just wanted to get it laid out in the correct way. So I had the man page open, and I followed along. And you do need to read it and reread it and reread it and reread it. especially for this section that says bar format. Okay, because it comes not really configured, just with a few bits and pieces, as you saw before. But yeah, how did I get this? Well, I had a look at what DT had put, and that wasn't quite what I wanted. So essentially, I played around with this. The codes tell you what everything does. So, for instance, pad with a space, put the output of the external script here, put the window class, the workspace name, the floating indicator, etc., etc., etc. So I went through and I played with this until I had it just as I wanted. To start off with, I was struggling with the N moniker, which is meant to give me my screen number, but all it seems to do is print 1, no matter what screen I'm on. So I've just got rid of it. And essentially, if you go through here, I've basically said this plus pipe symbol and the L are to say, I'd like that left align, please. I'm then going to leave a little bit of a gap, pad it with a space, and I'm going to have my workspace indicator there. So that gives me my workspace indicator. I'm then going to have in brackets this, the workspace name. I've named it. Sorry, there, I've named it. And after that, I decided that I wanted the window class. So it names what window I've actually got open here. Right, from there, I created a new region on the bar by having this plus pipe symbol and R to have everything right justified. And I said, what I want to start off with is A, the output of a script, and then the format of the clock that I want. So if you look at what I've got up here, it does match this. I then came to deciding on the font I wanted and stole off DT the font Joy Pixels and installed it just in case I wanted to try and put some little emoticons up in the bar. So bar format took me a while. Then what else did I do? I set it up so the nitrogen runs and PyCom, the new Compton, I believe that's what I'm meant to be using now, is running, and I've got the Mate Polkit agent there, and I'm setting my keyboard layout to GB. Initially, when you first logged into this, it's not set as GB, so it's set as that now. I've named my workspaces, and I basically pasted in the whole of the US key mapping into this file. I replaced D menu with the Rofi command. I'm obviously using Alacrity now rather than Xterm. I haven't finished with this. I still need to clean up these bindings to change them to my own liking and to decide what I'm not going to use, because there's just about every option here and I'm not going to use most of them, so I'll probably get rid of them out of the file. What else? You've also got the option here to set up what they call quirks. So if you open up a particular program and you want it to float right from the word go, you can set it to do that. Yeah, so still working through it, really. This has been really good in terms of setting everything up. But I would say that whilst it's relatively straightforward to get up and running with Spectrwm, the configuration takes a while. But if you're like me and you like digging around and getting it to work, well, eventually it does. So, yeah, that was all good. I then kind of turned to how I get all this stuff, statuses up in the bar, just to make it look a little prettier. And I followed Derek basically from that, because the man page here tells you that you need a bar action script, and you can link the bar action script through the +A character there to actually populate your bar. So let's just have a look at that. This started off, I'm not a programmer, I'm really not. I wouldn't even attempt to write a script. What I would attempt to do is modify a script. I can follow the logic, but I haven't got a great deal of interest in learning Bash to the extent where I write something right from the word go. Although I have written a little net script to show kilobytes down, kilobytes up. Again, borrowed a lot of the components by standing on the shoulders of giants and finding scripts out there and modifying them for my uses. So if you're worried about populating your bar and you think, well, I don't know how to write a Bash script, worry not. There are lots of examples out there on the net. Again, I'd direct you to DT's GitLab page. He's got a pretty good script to keep you going, and it works well. One of the things that he explained in a video that I actually watched yesterday morning, and I'm glad I did, was how to make the output on the bar here different colours. It does actually give you a little bit of information here in the man page about how to do this with these strange codes, but they're not really that clear. However, when I looked at the way DT had included these little characters, it started to make sense. So what I'm doing here is I've got all my variables in the script up here. I have got a temperature script as well, but I've not got that enabled at the moment. And basically what I'm setting here is my foreground colour before I have the hard drive thing here. So that's that nice green. Then I'm setting it back to the default, which is like a white for the pipe marker. Then I'm setting the colour to the second one for this orange colour for the memory, and so it goes on. So yeah, I'm more than happy where I've got to with this. It's taken a little bit of work. One of the things that I have tried to do, and I was initially missing, is some sort of system tray, because the Spectrwm window manager does not have a system tray included in the bar. So our first thought, well, the obvious solution here is let's go and use one of these standalone system trays, such as stalonetray. So I'd never played with stalonetray before, and I thought, well, perhaps it's relatively easy to fit in the top right-hand corner, just like anything else. So I went back to my configuration file, and I thought what I'll do is I'll add some space in here, and you'll see me doing this now. And I don't know, let's add, oops, I'm doing that the wrong way. Let's add 20. Right, so I've made some space. So technically, if I now launch stalonetray, it should have enough room to just slot into that bit there. And it does. And if I was to launch an applet, excuse me, launch an applet, NM applet, for instance, there we go. And there's the applet. And I could also launch, I don't know, per Mac tray. Right, so you'll see. Trouble is, I don't like the look of it. I don't like the border that you get round it. To me, it just looks ugly, and I would much prefer that it just wasn't there. And there we go. We're back to how we were. So, yeah, I've decided to live without a system tray. And to be honest, all I really have in my system tray is Network Manager applet, and I don't really need it. I'm on an Ethernet connection anyway, and on or CLI tools, which are fine for connecting to a wireless network if necessary. I have a volume icon. I don't really need it. I can adjust the volume of my computer from the command line really easily through ALSA Mixer. And there's the PMAC interface, which I don't ever use for updating or installing, but I do use it as a sort of a search tool. But again, I can search on the command line. So I don't actually need a system tray. So that's how I'm getting on with this. Let's go and have a chat. So that's Spectrwm. Overall, I'm actually quite impressed with it. I'm not there yet as far as the configuration's concerned. I've got lots of work to do with my key bindings and setting it up just as I want. It shouldn't take too much longer, and I'm already feeling quite comfortable, but I'm going to set the key bindings to what I've become used to in BSPWM, and then it should be fairly seamless. Of all the window managers that I've looked at so far, the tiling window managers, I feel as comfortable in this already as I do with BSPWM, so I'm impressed. It's small, it's lightweight. Yes, I use Polybar in BSPWM, and I don't think it works in this. Although I haven't tried it, I could be wrong. But I'm going to try living in it for the next month and see what I think. A few little niggles. Don't know why the screen number isn't displaying. I think that's probably something I just have to configure somewhere. Please, if you've any ideas, let me know. The layout toggle, the super space key as well. There's a strange thing happening when I use that. From vertical to horizontal, it's fine. As soon as it goes to the maximum, the full screen version, it sends my graphics all over the place and it starts flickering and almost crashing, it seems. Don't know why that's happening, because I can manually set it to full screen and there's not a problem. I'll play around with the key bindings. But other than that, I'm quite impressed. It's I won't pretend it's a 5-minute job setting it up unless you really know what you're doing. But I would encourage you to have a look if you're into tiling window managers. Spend the time with it, and it's one of those things that you do have to read the man page. You really do. I've gone through it many times, and I'm sure I've missed some bits and pieces, but I'm going to continue working on it. So that's it for today, guys. Really like this. Think it's a great find, and I'll see you. Well, I'm going to try and produce a video tomorrow. It's been a bit fraught this week because I've been at work for 2 or 3 days, but we'll do something. In the meantime, though, don't forget to join me on Library and come and join us at the OldTechBloke Facebook page. Until then, stay well and have a great weekend.